What's up, everybody, and welcome to this Trainwreck Sports podcast where we are here to pay the bills. Jake Micah, joined, as always, by my co-host Mike Bunt, and making his season debut, Carson Hayek, as we are here to break down what was a interesting game. I'll go to interesting. Let's just go interesting. We're not going to put we're not putting any other superlatives on it from Saturday. We're here to break down what happened on Saturday afternoon against the Bears. Mike was on site at the stadium, so he'll give us an in-depth look there. We were watching at home, so we'll get into all of it. We're brought to you by Picasso's Pizza. Order your Picasso's Pizza anywhere nationwide and in Western New York. Get ready for that football season. Get some frozen pizzas, throw them in the freezer, get them ready for game days for next Saturday for another preseason game or Bills season as it comes up. But we had a game Saturday, and it wasn't a great game, Mike. So what was your impressions of the Bills? We'll get right into it. What was your impressions of the Bills' 33-6 loss to the Chicago Bears on Saturday?
I mean, there's really not a lot of good things to say about the game. I'm in the camp that preseason games are mostly meaningless when you get to the NFL level. So I'm really not too angry about how they played. It's more that I feel like I wasted 3 hours of my life watching the game. But from an actual performance standpoint, you only really saw the defensive starters play one series. You saw Ed Oliver leave after the first play of the game. Then they pulled another 6 guys. You didn't have Matt Milano, no Von Miller at all in this game. So really, after the first defensive series, it was rotational pieces and guys fighting for a spot in the second defensive series. And then it was mostly backups and third stringers from that point on. So the score 33-6 looks bad, but really it was 13-6 late in the third quarter before the backups just basically made this look horrendous. And then offensively, you only saw Josh Allen throw a couple passes. He really didn't do much at all. He played 1.5 series. So I'm not too upset overall. I would have liked to see the run game be a little bit better, but I'm not overly concerned about that. I was excited to see Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel both get involved in the pass game early on. Keon Coleman got 3 targets. He had a nice catch on one play where he got decent separation, but not a ton of takeaways. We'll go over stock up, stock down later, but really not a ton to take away from that performance.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, you hit the nail on the head. To be honest, they were terrible. They were just flat out terrible, but it's preseason football. It's a masterpiece of mashed up things put together that's, a mixture of super vanilla offense and defense with a bunch of, guys who are trying to make plays. They're probably pretty tight, and how they're playing. They're not playing too loose. So, I mean, it's what I expected, to be honest, out of the first preseason football. I mean, not the score, but at the end of the day, I mean, congrats. Your third stringers are on that day slightly better than our third stringers. It was a close game going into the second half, though, and then obviously things completely fell apart. But there are things to like. I mean, Josh Allen on the offense, the run game wasn't great, but, Josh Allen still looks like he's Josh Allen. Curtis Samuel looks like he's going to have a nice role this year. Shakir's picking up where he left off last year. And I like where we're going here, at least with the starters, as long as they can stay healthy. Ed Oliver, that's difficult to see him go down on the first play, but it looks like he's going to be okay. So at the end of the day, all the starters seem to be at least, in good shape, barring Matt Milano got hurt today. But we didn't lose anybody for the season yet. So it's preseason football at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm in line with you guys. I mean, I'm never going to take too much away from a preseason game. There's some concerning aspects of this game that we'll get into when we get into our stock up, stock down. But overall concern, oh my gosh, fire alarm, sound all the alarms, this team is going to be terrible this year. You can't do that. You can't do that. And there's a couple other aspects of this game that you gotta look at it from the Bears side as well. I think they wanted to get Caleb Williams acclimated to their offense right away. They're putting him out scrambling. They're letting him kind of run the full offense. And as we heard from Connor McGovern, it seemed like the defensive line running stunts, running a game plan on that defensive line. Whether that has to do with Eric Washington being the D coordinator, calling plays and wanting to get back at his old team in some way, or just a team who's also in their second preseason game and already kind of worked out the basic kinks of seeing okay, we just want to see these guys in game action and maybe you wanted to install some stuff. That's a little different. Even if they're going to have the extra game, it's a little different of a process when you're in that second preseason game than you are in the first one. So I think there's a lot of different factors that came into it from the Bears side too, where it seemed like they were really like pushing in this game, especially with the starters, to kind of see what they could do. I mean, their defensive starters were playing into the second quarter in that drive that Mitch Trubisky took over for Josh Allen too. Like there were still starters out in the field. So it was just a different vibe. I feel like the Bears were out there trying to get some real work in. They got the week cut short last week. And the Bills were just, you know, they were definitely guys that they wanted to see in those positions, but it seemed very vanilla, seemed very basic. And that's really all I have to take from that. Let's get to some comments. Shout out to Buffalo sports fan looking forward to the show tonight. Well, thank you. And we're looking forward to the show tonight too. Bills Mafia 2024 said awful preseason game against the Bears, and the run game was awful. Was concerning to not see any pop run plays, but that could be a number of things that we could get into. And then again here from Steve Noble, we sort of got dominated at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. So let's get into it with we'll get into the stock up, stock down in a minute. But we do have news today as Chase Claypool was placed on IR, and I believe has the settlement been reached, and has he been released? I don't know if I saw that. I thought I had saw that update come through, but whether or not that's happened or not yet, doesn't seem likely that Chase Claypool is going to be on this roster. Does this change anything about the wide receiver room? And I know we talked about it last week, Mike, at length about the wide receiver room. So I think I know where you stand. So I'll start with Carson here and then come back to you. Are you disappointed in the Chase Claypool experience? Did you have any hopes for him, or is this kind of a sad ending to something that you didn't seem to see working out anyways?
I mean, let's be honest. If this guy was on like any other team, we'd probably be giving him the casual. Well, he kind of sucks. He's, has been. He had a few good years, Pittsburgh, and what has he done since? But since he's been with Buffalo, and obviously that's our team, and then we come in with this false hype, and maybe now's the time where he's gonna research his career with theoretically, okay, possibly that could be a real thing. But I think it was a much slimmer chance than many people believed it was going to be. And even if he was going to contribute, I think there was a tweet today that you guys put out, wide receiver 6 on the Aaron Rodgers flag meme. But yeah, I think he was going to be a guy that was going to be a rotational piece, maybe a guy who comes in third down or something like that. But I don't think he was going to be a key contributor. He's not, your Curtis Samuel guy who go out and get in the offseason. I'd say he's similar to more so Marquez Valdez-Scantling in the role that he would have played in certain situations. So it's not a game changer at the end of the day. I mean, it's tough as, I was kind of rooting for the guy, although I've been kind of praying on his downfall the majority of his career. But, I hope the best for him. And I don't believe they've reached a settlement yet. But if they have, then I would be wrong. But I was looking forward to it. I guess it never actually occurred. So rip to the Chase Claypool era, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it impacts too much for the Bills. Even when he was practicing, he looked like he was more fighting for a depth spot as one of the final wide receivers on the roster. Now, I was intrigued when they signed him, and I was hoping that maybe he could revitalize his career a little bit in Buffalo if given the opportunity, say there was injuries in front of him. I don't think Claypool did anything wrong during his time in Buffalo. He actually, by all reports, looked really solid in minicamp and OTAs, and I had some hope for him coming into training camp. Now, we already know where the top 4 receivers are going. Obviously, it was going to be some combination of Keon Coleman, Shakir, Samuel, Hollins, with MVS most likely 5, and then Claypool fighting with guys like KJ Hamler and some of the other players like MVS on the roster. But I'm just disappointed that it had to end this way. It wasn't that Claypool did anything wrong. It's just he got turf toe, and it was going to basically stick with him for a good amount of time. It is interesting that when he first got hurt, they indicated that it was a day-to-day injury and that now he's on IR, which tells you how important each roster spot is to the Bills at receiver right now, where they don't feel like they can basically give away a spot even in preseason. They need to test some of these guys out. And that also tells me that they really don't know who they have beyond Matt Collins, that right now they only feel comfortable with 4 guys. I think MVS is still fighting for a spot on this roster. Guys like Shavers, KJ Hamler, there's a lot of uncertainty in this wide receiver room. So it just kind of goes to show there is concern from Brandon Beane and the coaching staff about how they're going to address depth pieces on this team. But as far as what Claypool's impact was going to be on the Bills this year. It was probably going to be minimal. It's just disappointing that now you had a quality depth piece that if something does happen to one of your guys that is higher up on the depth chart, you don't really have a quality solution to that now.
Yeah. Well, quality is that word is doing a lot of work there, Mike, because it remains to be seen if Chase Claypool was a quality depth.
He's a quality. You know what? I will disagree with anybody that doesn't say he's quality. Even if you in your first 3 years in the NFL career averaged 56.5 catches for over 730 yards and 5+ touchdowns a year, he had a season where he nearly had double-digit touchdowns as a rookie. So he has talent. His problem was never that he didn't have talent. It was that he let his head grow a little bit too much as a rookie and as a second-year player, and then his ego created him to become a distraction. And when he went to other teams, he didn't gel right away. I still think Claypool has more than enough talent to be a contributor at the NFL level. It's more, will he get another opportunity, and will teams be patient with him going forward, which that doesn't seem like it's going to be the case necessarily.
No, it does not seem that way. It would be hope to see him on a roster get another chance. You know, you'd hate to see it end in an injury where he's going to be missing, potentially the year or whatever it ends up being. So hopefully he gets another shot. Let's get into the game, though, a little bit. We've got stock up, stock down. Mike, I'll start with you. And let's start in the positives. Let's go stock up. Who's your first stock up for the week from the preseason game?
Gotcha. So I don't know if you want me to go through all of my stock ups or just a few of them, but I'll just name drop.
Go through all of them.
I'll name drop my people right now. Stock up. I'll go by positions first. I'll say Ray Davis. He showed that he is someone that can contribute in the passing game as a running back. I think when he's on the field, you will have a multi-dimensional back that can contribute in a variety of ways. I know he didn't do a ton in this game, but I do think he showed off a little bit in the past game. Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, I think they're easy stock ups. More with them, they're just proving what we already thought. They're going to be a big part of this Bills passing attack, and that they both bring different things. I think going into the summer, there's a lot of question of who's the slot receiver and what are the roles going to be. Khalil Shakir, he's the slot guy. Curtis Samuel, he's more of your gadget, do-everything player. Another few guys I'm going to go stock up. Cedric Van Pran Granger, he looked really solid in his reps on Saturday. I'm going to go DeMar Hamlin for a stock up just because I think right now with these injuries to Cole Bishop and Mike Edwards, he's kind of solidifying his name for being the starter at safety opposite of Taylor Rapp, which I don't think anyone really would have thought a few weeks ago heading into training camp. And the last few names I'll have for stock up, Balin Spector, Javon Solomon, and Quinton Morris. Spector and Solomon, because I think both of them, not that there was huge questions about are they going to make the team, are they not going to make the team, but I think both of them have shown in camp and the preseason that they're dependable players that are deserving of backup opportunities. And finally, Quinton Morris. Last week when we did this show, I had Zach Davidson making the roster over him. Morris was getting reps with Mitch Trubisky and the twos, obviously as a key special teams contributor. Zach Davidson was playing with the threes with Shane Bussell, and that was just ugly. Maybe not Davidson's fault, but nothing happened while he was out on the field. So some of these are stock up by what they did on Saturday. Other ones are stock up based on how things are playing out so far for them.
Yeah, Bunny, I got very similar ones. You got the Khalil Shakir. He had a great outing, continuing where he left off. We touched on him. Curtis Samuel, he looks like he's going to bring the juice to this offense. He's a guy who can be used in so many situations. He's versatile. You can line up in the backfield. You can have him motion across the field. He could be your traditional wide receiver. He can play in the slot. You name it, he can do it. Another guy who I thought looks pretty solid was Frank Gore Jr. He's dealing with not the greatest offensive line. He's also not playing against the best defensive line. So you could say it cancels out, whatever you think with that. But he looked pretty solid with how he played. He had a few nice runs, and he was a key contributor, I thought, in the fourth quarter to the offense. Another guy, Spencer Brown. This guy is probably the most underappreciated Bill. I remember 2 years ago, this guy was getting ripped on left and right, and a lot of fans were calling for his name, bringing competition. This dude has won every single competition from external additions that they brought in, whether it's guys like George Fant. They brought in a guy, I believe, before I forgot his name. 2 years ago, this guy's won every competition, time and time again. He's come to the occasion. He's played well. I expect a huge year from him. Tyler Bass. This is a guy who's gotten ripped on lately in training camp. God forbid he misses 2 in training camp, but he went 2 for 2. 2 for 2 at the end of the day is 100%. And my last one's John Perry. The addition that a lot of people were like, wow, that's kind of interesting. Maybe it's like a trend starter or something like that. But the Bills, they go 2 for 2 on challenges. They two impactful challenges as well. So the addition of former referee John Perry, I think, could be a real under the radar addition to, let's just say, to the Bills this year for a team that's looking to get any help they can get as far as that aspect and time management and whatnot goes. So I really thought, there wasn't a ton of positives in this game, but, the ones that we did come out with, I'm pretty happy with.
I love that you threw John Perry in there. That's such a nice, and I thought the same thing watching the game, because how many times, and it's not like actually true. Like McDermott's pretty much around the rates of, he might be a little less than average on challenges, but it's not like it's like he misses every challenge like some of the fan base seems to think. But having a 2 for 2 right away, and in those moments, it was pretty decisive too. Wasn't like a question of whether they should, whether they shouldn't. No stalling tactics, like let's get it out there. I like that, to see that, just kind of the chain of command and the cohesion there with that. So Mike, you guys first of all, you guys jumped on pretty much everything that I already had. I said receivers 1 through 3 because we got to see Coleman, Shakir, and Samuel out there, but they all made at least one nice play. If you can get 12 yards on a Curtis Samuel screen or 8 yards on a little curl route by Khalil Shakir every play, you're going to take that all day, every day, take that profit. And that pitch and catch between Allen and Shakir is just one play, but it looks so easy for them. And the separation that Shakir is able to get is great to see. And then I had Sam Martin, I had Tyler Bass. Sorry, Sam Martin's on the other side of the things. Because, all the talk about Tyler Bass, like you said, 2 for 2 on game day. That wind was nuts. The one kick he made, you literally saw the ball like move all the way like through the post there as it was going. And to judge that wind and everything, I think it's a tough ask in that stadium. And I think that wind and everything had to have played some amount into the playoff struggles that he had. I'm not fully confident in Tyler Bass going into the season, but it was encouraging to see that on game day. Now he's had a rough couple days at practice. It is what it is. We'll see what happens during the next game, but that's where I was. So Mike, stock down. Who are you down on?
Yeah, so I'm going to do the same thing and go through all my stock downs now.
Please
I'm going to start out with Mitch Trubisky. He did not impress against backups, and to me that's concerning, because last year Kyle Allen did not look good for the Bills, and not that you're in a good situation if Josh Allen ever does go down. Obviously, you're going to have a huge drop, but if Allen was to miss a couple games, 2 or 3 games, you'd like to think that your backup quarterback could at least maybe get you a win and get you by for a few weeks. Trubisky looked awful. If that's how he's going to look, you can't count on him for anything if Josh Allen goes down for any period of time during the regular season. So that was a little bit concerning. Then I'm going to go stock down with Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Tyrell Shavers. I was hoping for one of them to step up in this game, make a few plays. I've been hyping up Shavers. I still think Shavers has had a solid camp and was nice last year on the practice squad. But at the stadium, I would have to watch the game over. The one drop where the pass was behind him, not an easy play, but if you're fighting for a roster spot, I feel like that was a play he needed to make. MVS with a straightforward drop. And we've been talking about these drops all the time with MVS last year in Kansas City. It's not a good sign that those are continuing right now. I'm not going to put Cook for a stock down. He obviously didn't do much during the game. And overall, they said his drop issues have continued during practice, which not a good thing when you're a passing offense and you have a backup running back who's already starting to show some flashes in the passing game, receiving the ball. But I will say stock down for the Bills running game as a whole. I'm not overly concerned about it because It is preseason. They're not game planning. Like you said, Eric Washington and the Bears defensive line had some extra motivation. We're running some stunts. So things probably weren't necessarily fair, equal, head to head. But in the trenches, the Bills kind of got owned on both sides of the ball. And then a few other last guys I have for stock down. I'm just going through my list right now. I have Sam Martin, the punter. You can't have some of those botch punts that he had. It's becoming a concern. Whenever it's windy and cold, Sam Martin cannot be relied on. Now, once in a while he kicks a bomb, but some of those punts were awful. Steve, appreciate your comment. I agree with you. There was two from my perspective that were just horrible. And yeah, his average might have been okay at the end of the day, but that was not a good day punting. And then the last few people I'll put for stock down, obviously Claypool, not his fault, but injured reserve, see his season come to an end. That just sucks from a personal standpoint. And one guy I didn't know whether to do stock up, stock down, stock neutral, KJ Hamler. So he has the muffed return on the kickoff, which not good. Then he has a solid punt return. That's solid. Had a reception where he got wide open. That's a good sign. But then he trips over his own feet. That's a bad sign. And then a few days later, the Bills go out and add 2 returners to the receiver room. So maybe that's a sign they're not fully comfortable with KJ Hamler being the returner right now. I still think he probably has the inside track at it, but stock down, stock up, stock neutral. Who knows what to put KJ Hamler?
Yeah, I mean, that's phenomenal work. I totally agree with almost everything you said. For me, my list extremely similar. I'll start with Sam Martin. I mean, the guy had a really, really rough end of the year, and I completely understand he was hurt. But when you come out and the shanks and you start Matt Hawking them again, like we can't have that. For an offense that's going to need, you're going to be likely rarely punting. But when you do punt, you got to be able to do your job. I wouldn't doubt them bringing in a second guy here if he has another bad outing against Pittsburgh. Punter is a pretty replaceable position. The second one, the run game. The run game was terrible. At any point in the game, whether it was with the ones, the twos, the threes, it was awful. The run game's got to be figured out. That was huge in the Joe Brady offense last year when Dorsey was let go. They were a pretty pass-heavy offense. Last half of the year when Joe Brady took over, they really, really became more balanced, and that was because they were able to move bodies up front and run the football extremely, extremely well. If they can't do that this year, especially with Diggs gone, that's a problem, and they're going to have to figure that out. The third thing, a guy who played minimal amount and in a position that is in a lot of help right now, safety, Kendall Williamson. He did not have a great game in coverage. Then he obviously gets the personal foul, I believe, in the second quarter. Can't have that. And discipline. Discipline was terrible. Too many pre-snap penalties. Just it's terrible. I understand that there's a lot of backups in, and most of the guys who are in will not be playing. But even just the whole game, Sean McDermott, the first guy to tell you, he was pulling his hair out the whole game. And the last thing, quarterbacks. They bring in Ben DiNucci for a good reason. Trubisky, I was a little higher on his performance than a lot of the people. Obviously not his best performance, though. He's got to be a little bit better. Bouchel was a bit of a disaster. He didn't get a ton of help. He was using his legs a ton, and he just didn't have a great game. So Ben DiNucci, I guess we'll see how he does this weekend. I hope the kid does well because the Bills do need some help here in the next quarterback.
They missed an opportunity to do what we all wanted. Well,
yes.
Maybe not you guys, but what I wanted. I wanted Nathan Rourke to be a Buffalo Bill. And
you said Nathan, and I was about to lose my mind, so I'm glad that you went Rourke. Ooh, you scared me for a minute.
Oh, God, yeah. You said Peterman. No Peterman. I'm done with that. But I was I wanted the Bills to bring in the former Ohio University quarterback, the Maple Missile, the Canadian, like you can make up whatever Canadian Manning brother, half of the Canadian Manning brothers with his brother Curtis. But they didn't make it happen. They brought in Ben DiNucci, and that's going to be that. But how do you feel, Jake, about this comment from Steve about Hamler being a very volatile stock right now? Where would you lean where would you guys lean with Hamler right now? Is he making it? Is he not making it? What is all this going on?
After last week, and I picked KJ Hamler to make this roster, the only audible noise I made while watching this preseason game, because I don't take a lot of stock, was KJ dropping that kickoff. So I'm like, fuck, Sean he's not even gonna see the field the rest of the game. God damn it. But the thing I did like is that McDermott did say about him, and Hardy bobbled the one a little bit too, and then still had it. He said, I need to get these guys out there in the stadium in the conditions. So it was like, at least McDermott wasn't like, these guys need to, they need to hold on to the ball, need to do better. He's like, maybe I need to, get them in these conditions to better it. But seeing the returners get signed was a little worrisome. Yeah, I'm not feeling as good about my Hamler pick. And he did have a nice catch, did have some nice separation. But if he's going to be a returner, they got to trust him in that stadium in that big opportunity. Any mistake gets so maximized and so blown out when you're a guy fighting for a spot like this, and especially with how competitive that wide receiver room is, but and the returners too. Like if they want to just go, I wouldn't put it past them. I think maybe he's going to have too much to do in the offense to do it, but I wouldn't put it past them to just be like, all right, we're just going to put Shakir as the punt returner, and we're not really going to return punts, like only if he's got a clear lane to do something so he doesn't get hurt. But we'll fair catch it and take the ball wherever we get it all these times. Like to keep the ball if they don't trust these guys. I wouldn't put it past them. They've done it in the past with throwing Micah Hyde back there as the punt returner, and he didn't really do a lot of returning. It was more just like, no, just field the ball, get Josh Allen back on the field. So I'm a little worried about the Hamler stock, but I don't think he's going to be – I think he is going to have plenty of opportunity in the next two games to kind of show who he is and what he is. And they need help from those quarterbacks too. That's the thing. That was my biggest stock down, was the backup quarterback situation. Obviously, the Bouchel injury is it's disappointing, and it sucks for him that he's hurt like this and everything else. But Trubisky wasn't that great either, and I would have much rather seen Nathan Rourke than Ben DiNucci come in. Now I understand DiNucci. It's more about the playbook, right? Like Joe Brady, it's all kind of that Sean Payton system. And just kind of the verbiage and the concepts and everything would be similar to him for him to pick up on quicker. But man, haven't we seen enough Ben DiNucci play football? And I tried to look up Ben DiNucci highlights, like earnest highlights, the other day to post, and there are no highlight videos. And there's highlight videos.
One start in 3 games.
There's highlight videos for everyone.
Mike? You got to go to the XFL. You got to check the leagues.
Couldn't do the XFL. I was like, I can't put a post up hype in this XFL.
He's one of those quarterbacks
highlights.
that like you look up and you're like, I never heard of this guy before. And like, I think he, like you said, he had one start in Dallas. Was it Dallas? I think he had a start.
It was Sunday Night Football against the Eagles.
Yes, I remember. Like he actually I think did okay for a little bit, but
yeah,
like I had to look up like where this guy went to college. Was he drafted? And he actually had an okay college career, but yeah, whenever they get a quarterback like that or Shane Bouchel, like it makes you really like test your football knowledge.
Oh man. So that's a good place to jump from stock up, stock down to the comment you threw in here earlier, Mike, just to talk about the whole preseason. Players that have impressed and disappointed us. I think we could probably come up with one each and then give some honorable mentions away, because this is not the same as the stock up, stock down, right? Like the game is one thing, but we've come so far through the preseason, camps broken and everything else. And I want to hear from you guys. Like, and I'm going to use this question, and I don't know how you're going to answer this. Please answer it any way you wish to. But more just like, who are your guys? And you talked about it a little bit last week with Davidson, right? Bunty, like that how well he's looked and how much you wanted to give him a spot and everything else. Like, who are your camp guys? Like that maybe it's a little irrational, maybe it's, whatever that you've been impressed by, or guys that you're just ready to give up on. Like you're just done with.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start offense and then I'll go defense after that.
That works.
If I had to go offense, the two guys that have impressed me the most while I was watching, I mean, the one is obvious. Like, I'm going to say Josh Allen because he's always impressed me. You're like,
Did you see that? Do you see that Target video? That was pretty impressive, man.
Like, I know, like, that's stating the obvious. So, like, I'll say that Khalil Shakir has really stood out to me. That I went into, and I know I already used him in my stock up, but I went into the offseason thinking, how are the Bills going to address wide receiver? What is Khalil Shakir's role going to be on this team? in 2024. And I really think, based on what I've seen so far at camp and during the preseason, Khalil Shakir is going to have 60-plus catches this season. I think he is a 60 to 65 catch guy for 750 to 850 yards and like 5+ touchdowns. I think this guy is going to be one of the better slot receivers in the NFL one day. And I don't want to like this all to be hype because of preseason training camp. I remember when he was drafted, I thought he was a day 2 caliber player who could have gone in the 3rd round. So when he went in the 5th round, I was shocked that the Bills got him as low as they did. And I remember some people were joking around on the radio about, oh, the Bills think they got their next Stephon Diggs. And like, obviously, like Shakir is not the next Stephon Diggs, but like, I think Shakir is going to be like a really solid player in the NFL for a good amount of time. He has elusiveness. He finds ways to get open. He has a lot of different traits. And then Steve here with the comment, Shakir is a lot better than most fans think, including myself. Yeah, I'm with you, Steve, on that. Like, there was always that like Khalil Shakir hive that was like, oh, this guy's going to be insane next year. And like, I think they were like a little bit too early on it. But if you went to the typical fan, they probably don't realize how good Shakir is going to be. He's probably going to be their top receiver this year, behind Dalton Kincaid as far as receiving options on the team. Now, if you're going to go to a player that's stood out defensively for me, Ed Oliver, all day, Ed Oliver. During camp, he's been dominant. Like, a lot of questions. What's he going to do this year after having a career year last season, double-digit sack potential? Every time I'm watching him, he's making a play in the backfield, whether it's blowing up a run, getting pressure on Josh Allen. Obviously, he only had 1 snap in the preseason game, but Ed Oliver has been an absolute beast so far. I haven't really paid too much attention to the linebackers because you know what you're going to get from a Milano and a Bernard. Obviously, Milano hurt today, hopefully not too serious. But when I am watching the defense, Oliver has stood out almost every single snap.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, a guy who stick out for me, at least on offense, who's impressed me compared to relative to expectation, I'd say is probably Tyrell Shavers. I mean, obviously the preseason game didn't go exactly how he wanted, but in training camp, it seems like every single day, all of a sudden it was Tyrell Shavers, nice grab here and that nice grab there. Then it also turned into Josh Allen is now throwing Tyrell Shavers the football. So then he started to catch some traction and stuff like that. And it seemed like he was almost like one of the most consistent wide receivers in camp. So if he can continue to keep that up, I mean, and translate to preseason football, why can't this guy make the 53 roster, especially with Claypool being gone, then bringing in a bunch of guys like Demir Bird and Deion Kane today. So really, I think wide receivers 4, 5, and 6 is anyone's game. So if he can continue that consistency, I'd be very impressed with him making the roster. As far as the guy goes on defense, I have 2 of them. I'd say one is Kaiir Elam. He was coming off a year which he was disappointing. He finished the year, and people were really calling for his name. So he's a guy who I heard has been pushing Christian Benford for that starting job, although I think Benford's probably still got it. But Elam's had a great camp, and I'm hoping that he can possibly break out this year in his time that he plays. And another guy, Joe Andreessen. What a story this guy is. Buffalo, former Lancaster legend, rookie minicamp, undrafted free agent. I mean, if you're not drafted by the team, like the battle that you have to go up is so steep. The hill is it's crazy. Let alone he makes rookie minicamps, gets the contract, and who would have thought he's even still with the team? He got some time in the third and fourth quarter, looked pretty decent. I think he's a guy who has a chance, if not practice squad, if everything goes right for him, maybe the 53, especially if Milano's out, long term. Hopefully he's not, but it's just another opportunity for him. So I've been very impressed with him. Just his story, too, is crazy.
It is crazy to see how well he's been doing and everything else. I think another guy I'll throw in there. You guys touched on a couple of them that I wanted to mention. Shakir being the top of it, just like he looks like he's like a seasoned vet, and he always kind of has carried himself that way. Seemed like he is wise beyond his years and everything else. And Steve with the comment here, Josh Allen definitely has the ability to make a lot of these B and C players look a lot better. Yeah, and I think that's like the story of the receiver room this year is okay. Like we saw Patrick Mahomes do this last year. Why can't Josh Allen do the same thing? And it's not like the offense for the Chiefs was efficient all year, and it was one of their worst point per game totals they've had. It might have been their worst point per game total since Mahomes has taken over as quarterback. But all that mattered was that they got in the playoffs and then they could make those plays late in the year. And I think it was my this is a big picture. This is getting off topic a little bit. It was my biggest frustration when the Bills were struggling in the middle of the season last year, when everybody was sounding every single fire alarm and all these other things. It's like, this is not when you want to be good. And these teams that are good for a lot, sometimes they're going to have lulls, especially a team like the Bills, who had all the guys who have been coming back year after year and dealing with these disappointments. The motivation isn't going to be there in October for some of these games. Like, it just isn't. That's human nature for how the NFL kind of plays out. Like, the people don't, in general, in a sports psychology moment, don't take into account enough how much motivation goes into any given game. Yes, you would think that every player wants to go out and give it their all every single game. It's just not how the league works, especially in the NFL, where they're professionals and everything else. So that being said, I think that they've bet on that let's see how this group can get through. And when we get to November and December, we know we win all these football games. Like Sean McDermott, I can't remember exactly what the record is in December. I know it's pretty damn good, though. And that's what you want out of your football team. And so I think Josh will make all these players look better after the time comes to the season, after they're able to see how teams have started defending them and get their answers out. And I think that it's a safe bet with Josh Allen. I think we know how much talent and how much he's gotten out of players throughout their whole career and given some of the players their best years of their career. I loved when we've had a lot of Diggs discourse this week too. Just one day of it when showing Diggs the conversation with CJ Stroud, and it went a little crazy on Bill's Twitter and everything else. But I just love that the Diggs discourse, it is, yes, Josh Allen had his best years when Stephon Diggs showed up, but Stephon Diggs also wasn't all pro with Josh Allen. Like, it's never like thought of that this is a symbiotic relationship. It's always, that guy made Josh Allen. Also never really thought of that, it was just natural progression for Allen as he was getting better and better, that it was like two perfect storms coming together. But that is what it is. My most impressive guy, after my tangent, thank you guys for listening to that quick, and Steve is the perfect segue for it. He said, as a rookie, Coleman has had a lot of incredible moments. He's a student of the game, he puts in the time. The player I'm most impressed by is Keon Coleman, because I didn't know what to expect, and there were some missteps, I guess, early in camp that you were hearing about but I think he's pretty much flashed every single day since OTA, since camp. He looked good in that game, got separation. Even the play, Trubisky almost throws the pick, and the wherewithal for Coleman to turn into a defender there at the back of the end zone. And I was talking to my brother on the phone about that play and he's like, oh, why aren't, it's a big body. Why aren't you throwing Coleman in the corner of the end zone or start throwing it up? I'm like, that route against the back of the end zone, Mitchell I don't know what he's thinking. Carson, you can speak to this too a little bit. I don't know what he's thinking on that throw, because he's trying to like rip that into his gut when all he had to do was act like he was trying to throw it out of the end zone and Keon can go up and get it. And I think that's what Josh would have done to throw that ball. Like, I think Josh is putting that in a spot where only Keon Coleman has a chance to get it. And instead Mitchell just tried to like fit it into the window there that wasn't there. Did you have that same vibe from that play?
So it's a good question. That's a good point you bring up. So what your goal is, if the defender's back's turned and his hands are like that, I mean, you could rip that thing like either on the side of his head, put it up where Keon can go get it, but it's more of there's a scaling. So there's 1 through 3. 1 is your rip, 2 is like your loft ball, and then 3 is like your lob football. I'd say right there, typically he'd probably want to put that on a 2 ball. And if you ask him, he probably knows he ripped it more 1 than it is 2. But if his back's turned, which it wasn't, it was more so a body positioning throw. Yeah. I would like to see Keon get a 50-50 chance. They're not so 50-50, but like where only he can get it. So in that spot, I thought that was a poor location from Mitch. He probably knows that too. He'd probably like to have that one back. But if his back's turned, he's open. But in that case, the defender was like half sideways and then coming down on it too. That's one you got to give Keon a chance. And it just wasn't a great throw. But I mean, first preseason game, so
exactly,
better now than later.
Yeah, so we're on the same page there. So I was just, I think that Coleman, I'm really excited to see him with Josh Allen like in a full game, because it seems like they have some chemistry there, and Coleman's looked good in the flashes, and I liked what I saw from him in that game too, getting the separation and just seeing we hear about the athlete he is if you didn't watch him in college, but seeing him on an NFL field and still looking like that athlete is pretty damn impressive. And I would say the most disappointed out of that game, it's got to be with Trubisky just from this game. But like you said, first preseason game, there's a lot to work on. But man, I just wish the Bills had who cares if there's a good, part of me is I don't care if there's a good backup quarterback, because if Josh is hurt, we're screwed anyways. What does it matter? But it would be nice to have some stability in there. And I don't know if we've had that. I guess Mitchell a couple years ago you felt better about, but wasn't a great year last year with the Steelers. Wasn't the first good preseason game. So that's where I'm at with that. Any other thoughts you guys? We're getting ready to wrap up here. Mike, do you have any other thoughts from the game? Anything you're looking forward to for this week's game?
I just hope the Bills don't look flat again. To me, it doesn't really matter too much either way. The value they're really getting is out of training camp practices, out of these joint practices with the Steelers later this week. I'm a big believer the Bills are going to get more out of these joint practices against the Steelers than they are on the actual field Saturday evening. Because these preseason games, they're not game planning. They're not putting a lot of prep into they're basically just taking their practice and putting it out in the field. And if the other team decides to be a little creative and be a little fancy, well, good job. You just went extra for a preseason game, and we're not going to give away stuff. And I think a lot when you're talking about the Bills with all of these new weapons on their offense, and a new offensive coordinator, you don't want to give up too much of what your strategy and intentions are with these guys going forward. Yes, it's easy to kind of predict Dalton Kincaid's going to be you're probably your leading target, and that Khalil Shakir are going to be heavily involved in the pass game, and that Keon Coleman might be a red zone threat, and that you're going to run the ball more this year than maybe you did 2-3 years ago. But you don't want to show too much of that. You want to leave some guesswork, and then especially with the defensive side of the ball. Sure, Bobby Babbitt has been under Sean McDermott for several years, coaching the safeties and the linebackers. But we don't know what Bobby Babbitt has up his sleeve defensively this season. We don't want to give away any of that in meaningless preseason games. And I look back to last year. The Bills were losing 27-0 to the Pittsburgh Steelers in the preseason entering the fourth quarter. And there were so many people going crazy about the performance. And then when it mattered in the playoffs, the Bills just absolutely took care of the Steelers like it was easy. I remember the preseason game last year. I heard people freaking out. Oh, Deion Dawkins looks out of shape. Oh, my God, what's he going to do? Khalil Shakir, dad supposedly said he doesn't want to be in Buffalo. That was something that people, for some reason, were talking about on Twitter, which is just this is what we talk about during the preseason. It's crazy stuff. None of it matters. And what I told people then, and I'll tell people now, when Dawkins struggled in the preseason, no, I didn't care, because Dawkins is one of the players that uses training camp preseason to get in shape, so he's ready for the regular season. Not all these players are 100% ready to go. Some of them need this just to get reacclimated and back into it mentally. And for a team like the Bills that have been so successful for such a long period of time, and even with them being younger, have a lot of returning players at several positions, including Josh Allen. They don't really need to show off or show anything in the preseason, like maybe a younger team like the Bears, or maybe possibly the Steelers with a new quarterback taking over. For the Bills, it's just about let's get reps and let's mentally get ready for the start of the year.
For sure.
100%. I mean, this team, although, a lot of the vets are out, these guys are NFL players. They're a majority of their core that's returning don't need the reps. Josh Allen, Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, even these guys are, get them out there through the routine, give them a drive or two so they feel what it's like again. And other than that, though, it's really I more so focus on the guys who are in competition. So that's what preseason is all about. If these guys can battle it out, make each one of them better, that's where your depth improves. That's when it's the little things, the 1% that will eventually lead to success with this team. So I'm not concerned about, any of the stuff that happened Saturday. The starters were out after the first quarter. Who cares? We play the Bears in week 1. We'd probably beat them. Let's just be honest. So you brought a great point up with the Steelers game last year. I mean, we were getting blown out that game just left and right after every play. And how'd that turn out? We beat them in the playoffs when it actually mattered. So not that worried about it. We'll see how it goes. Week 1 when the Cardinals come around, we'll see how that goes. So it's all preseason football for a reason. So I'm excited for it.
At this point, too, when I was at training camp and was granted media access, once again, thanks to the Bills for that, I asked Josh about the new receiving group. And I asked him, how long does it take to get comfortable with basically a new group of receivers? And he basically said, and this is a week into training camp, I already feel comfortable with these guys. Yeah. We have the chemistry already established. We have had OTAs, mini camp. We have thrown passes together as a unit during the offseason, during the summer. He mentioned at that point that they had already had the majority of the offense installed. So, yes, like we want to see what it will look like, but the Bills, if they already feel confident about what it will look like, and Josh is the number one guy I'm going to go to when I ask about confidence level in the unit, if he feels okay, then that's all I need.
Bingo.
If he said something like, well, it's not gelling early, we need more reps, we need more practice, well, then I'd be a little concerned and I would want to see a little bit more in these preseason games. But if Josh feels like these guys already have it, then that's all you really need to hear. It doesn't really matter what they show in the preseason. If he says he has it, I'm just going to trust him because he's shown that on the football field, he can do almost anything he wants. If he feels confident, I'm going to feel good.
Well said. That's a great way to end it. If Josh Allen feels confident, I'm feeling good going into the year too. And that's really, we could sit and talk about this preseason. All that matters, as long as 17's playing well to start the year, I think that things will fall into place, especially for this offense. The defense, as you said, that Milano Health update is going to be really important going into this week. And I'd rather see him bubble wrapped until week 1 at this point for Arizona to avoid anything there. But that's going to do it. We paid the bills. Shout out to our sponsor Picasso's. Go get your Picasso's pizza at picassospizza.net. Shipped anywhere nationwide or at obviously all the locations in Western New York. I'm jealous of you two fellas that can go pop over to Picasso's on a sweet Tuesday night like this. But that's the beauty. Get it anywhere in the country. So shout out to them. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Carson. As always, we will be back next week, Tuesday, 7 o'clock, to talk about Bills Steelers. Last year's performance against Steelers was much like this one, I feel like, in the Bears games. Hopefully we get a better performance this year and this week. Thank you guys. Have a great night, folks.